Good evening, folks. I'd like to welcome you to the March 21st meeting of the Stillwater Planning Commission. Item 2, land use for discussion and possible action. Gary and Mickey Rogers, preliminary plat PZ-17-2178, requesting review and approval of a preliminary plat for the property addressed 5398 North Hartford Street to replat Lot 1, Block 2 of North Tower Park, 5th section. Mr. Beatty?
This is a replat of an outlot on original development that surrounded the water tower. Originally, it was proposed as a park, but the city didn't need any additional parkland, so they're finishing the development out here with the proposed development. As you can see from this slide, the area surrounds the water tower at the top of the hill on Hartford across from Casey. The proposed plat will be a short cul-de-sac that just kind of wraps around to the south, blow up there. This is a view photograph looking to the west from KC Street. The preliminary plat is required when creating more than 3 lots. This proposed plat will create 9. The proposed preliminary plat meets all of the zoning and subdivision requirements.
Good deal.
Any questions?
Any questions?
I think you received some email comments regarding this proposed preliminary plats. We handed those out to you today. Most of them deal with water pressure in the area, and go ahead and address that a little bit since it'll come up later in the evening as well. The pressure in the area, the low pressure, is still above DEQ's minimum. The city a number of years ago, after this preliminary plat and development and all the improvements were in place, adopted a revised standard where new water lines are to be built to maintain a minimum of 40 psi. Pressures here are in the neighborhood of the mid to low 30 psi pressure, but which is still above DEQ's minimum.
What is DEQ's minimum?
25 psi.
Okay.
The area is that water tower serves the whole northern northeast portion of the city. Area like the canyon and other, or the canyons and other developments there are also served from that water tower. Flow and pressure problems are related to just the shortness of the tower, the lack of head that you can build up, but there's no volume limitation. So a simple reference. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to.
Mike, you might kind of explain. I think, I always thought, well, the closer you live to the water tower, the better for pressure, but that's not true. The lower you are from, you might explain
That's
that.
right. Well,
probably explain it better than I can.
You can live next to the ocean, and if it's not high enough, you don't have any pressure there. You have plenty of volume, but you just don't have the pressure. The water tower elevates the water from the pumps and from our clear wells to give our system, just use gravity to serve the populace. And the problem is that tower is just not large enough. It costs several hundreds of thousands of dollars to improve the tower, and then we'd also have to improve our booster pumps. And the city has a long-range plan to address that, but it's not a simple, small fix.
So if we approve this tonight and if it's developed, do we have any idea on how it would change the pressure?
We require a demand analysis to be done for every development. With the most recent one, the additional 8 or 9 houses reduced the pressure by 1/100 of a psi. It was theoretical, but that's not really noticeable.
So you have enough volume to serve everybody, So therefore, your pressure, you don't have a significant pressure
Right.
reduction.
Right. And if a single-family house impacted pressure significantly, all of the new houses in the canyons and the new businesses south on Perkins would have a hugely noticeable effect. The tower that's there and the system that's there meets all of DEQ standards, and we're significantly above that. It doesn't meet our newer convenience standards that were adopted after this system was put in place. And the city does have a long-range plan to address that. Their focus is kind of on the south end right now. So, any other questions?
Questions? All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this, go ahead and step forward, state your name and address, please.
Good evening. Stephen Gose with Gose and Associates, 113 East 8th. Here on behalf of the applicant. We've looked through Tom's report and Mike's presentation and don't have anything to add. Just here to answer any questions you may have now or later. So,
Any questions for Mr. Gose?
I do have a quick question. I noticed in some of the phone calls I'd received from the neighbors and as well as some of these emails, looks like drainage is a big concern. And I guess with that particular area being one of the highest areas elevation-wise
Right.
out there, have y'all looked at,
yeah, so what we're going to
Drainage and-
do on the lots on the north side of the street is create a concrete flume adjacent to the utility easement that's back there that will divert water to the west and to the east, where the water was intended to go originally, but right now it's going into those backyards. So the only water that could get into those backyards at that point would be whatever falls in the 10-foot easement. So we're taking out, that long drainage path and just a little bit of grass area where the utilities are. So it will be diverted to the west and east out away from those backyards. To the east, it'll go into the street. To the west, it'll go into a ditch along Perkins Road. And then on the south, there's just two lots that drain south. One will get to Hartford pretty easy. The other one's got quite a long distance between it and the adjacent properties. So,
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and ask for those who wish to speak against this item. Step forward, state your name and address, please.
My name's Tracy Knight. I live at 621 Lynn Lane, and my backyard literally is backed up to the high elevation area where the water tower is. Speaking of the drainage problem, I've had the people prior to me had to install a French drain. I still have quite a bit of a water issue and drainage problem. It's going into my garage. Sounds like they're trying to work that out. But I was told when we bought the property that this was never going to be developed. And that's kind of my concern. And yes, maybe it wasn't in writing or whatnot, but that was kind of the whole idea going into this. That was, one of the selling points for me and my children was to be able to walk out to some open land, not have any neighbors. If the way it's raised up, literally, I can look out my back door and pretty much be eye level with the ground. So I'm assuming with someone being right behind me as a new neighbor, we'll be able to just, no privacy, basically, is what I'm concerned about as well. So that's why I'm here.
Appreciate it. Anyone else wish to speak against this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternative.
You can approve the plat as presented. You can find that the plat's not in conformance with our regulations and deny it, or you can table it.
Mike, was this area platted originally with,
It was platted as an outlot. The storm drainage, they anticipated, when they did the analysis, they assumed that it would be eventually single-family. But I think years ago, when they started the subdivision, the area around the tower, they were just going to dedicate as a city park. The city elected not to accept that we've got plenty of park ground all over town. And so it is just an undeveloped, unused lot there with the plat. So it was an outlot.
Any other questions?
Is it unusual to have housing so close to the water tower, or is that?
Well, there's not a lot of places in Stillwater that way, but in other places you have water towers adjacent to and in developments, other places I've been. I don't know, water towers aren't a real common thing. And so I'm not sure whether the tower was there before the original development was there or not, but it happens. So, especially as communities grow, they'll fill in.
Any other questions? All right. Any discussion amongst the commissioners?
I mean, a number of the people in the emails remarked that they didn't receive their
Yeah.
notice until today, or yesterday or so. I mean, how do we know, was the proper notices sent out in sufficient time for them to be able to respond? I mean, we've got 15 email here and no people.
Anyone from the?
I think that's a legal question.
Yeah.
All it did.
Just wanted to wake you up over there.
Oh, I'm not asleep, thank you. Oh, you were talking about him sleeping?
Yeah.
Okay, thank
We know you
you.
don't
He was
sleep.
over there, he was about asleep, so.
Paula Dennison, Development Services. Notice was sent out. There is no time stipulation in city code of how many days in advance notice is to be sent out for a final plat. Keep in mind, this is a courtesy notice that we have in our regulations, because for preliminary plat, for plats, there is no statutory notice requirement from state law. So the city of Stillwater has chosen to notify residents within that radius area that something is going to occur. We certainly can look, and this is going to be a plug, we are starting to look at updating the land development code, so that'll be coming to y'all in about 9 months or a year. And one of the things that we will be looking at is how can we better notify in a more timely fashion. But keep in mind, state law does not require notice for these type of activities, but notice was sent.
Do you know when, Paula, off the top of your head?
This past Friday
That's right.
was notice, when notice was sent out, yes.
By,
And you're right, that does not give a lot of time.
by USPS.
Correct. Yeah, we do not have a data bank of everyone's email in the city, nor any ability to sort the emails that we do have into what areas of town they are for email notification purposes. Any other questions while I'm up here? Okay.
My thought is this, what I've heard is two different concerns. One being the drainage concern, and what I heard is the plan addresses that drainage concern. And that by having the, as I understand it, the concrete ditch on the north side diverts water and ought to help in that particular area. The other thing is the water pressure issue, and it's in compliance with state and federal law and regulations not in compliance with the current City of Stillwater regulations, but I don't believe the developers are responsible to bring the system up to current regulations for the city.
Right,
Do I
clarify.
have that right? Clarify.
Yeah, the standards are for new water line construction. This
Yes.
site, there's an existing water line that serves the tower and connects to the line on Hartford, and they'll just be connecting into that. So from a technical standpoint, it does meet those standards, this particular one.
But the water pressure does not meet
If
what
we-
we'd like to have in a new development.
If they were doing a new development and a new water line, it would need to meet the
Yeah.
40 PSI. But since they're tying into an existing line here, existing system, it kind of predates that requirement.
And is not causing significant reduction in what's already out there in terms of pressure and volume.
That's correct.
So I'm in favor of approving this.
I'll second.
Can we get a formal motion?
I move to approve. Accept findings and approve the proposed preliminary plat as presented.
I'll second.
Let us vote. And that does pass, 5 yes. All yes, I suppose. Let's go with item B, Arbor Village LLC amended plat unit development of PZ.17.2180, requesting review and approval of an amended an amended planned unit development for property addressed as 1 and 55 through 99 Arbor Circle to rezone from office to RT Residential 1 and 2 family PUD to all RT PUD zoning. Let's start that over. Arbor Village LLC amended planned unit development PZ.17.2180, requesting review and approval of an amended planned unit development for property addressed as 1 and 55 through 99 Arbor Circle, together with a map amendment to rezone from office to RT Residential 1 and 2 family as a preliminary plat to create 24 residential lots and 2 outlots from the 12 existing lots. Mr. Beatty.
This is a little bit unique one as well. This is the Arbor Village development. They're at the southwest corner of 19th and Western. The area hatched and outlined in black is the area of the rezoning and the revised preliminary plat. There's 2 separate things going on, the rezoning and the preliminary plat approval. The preliminary plat shows residential houses along the outside of the perimeter, which is similar to the interior. There's a blow up of it. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The area around the east of it is zoned office. That's a floodplain detention area. The area to the north is public. It's Babcock Park. And then we have agricultural farther to the east and RMI to the south. This is the countryside church there just to the southeast. Blow up of the proposed preliminary plat. This is the original preliminary plat. You can see office type, commercial type offices on the north and east leg of the loop for the development. This is a street view looking along 19th Street to the west. And then this is looking to the south. This is interior at Arbor. Make sure I get the. My eyes are not as good as they used to be. Arbor Circle on the south side. This is the part that wraps around the south. You can see a drainage going to the south there, and then this is looking back to the east. A comparison of the differences, RT, single one family, and then office. They're proposing this to all be residential, so the RT fits. The request requires a rezoning and a PUD amendment, since the PUD included the office use. The request includes amendments to uses and standards and the preliminary plat. The remainder of the Arbor Village is zoned RT, PUD, and office PUD. The proposed preliminary plat changes are consistent with the comprehensive plan. Portions of the plat are still located in a FEMA floodplain. One of the recommendation requirements was that they would complete the LOMOR to remove the proposed development out of the FEMA floodplain. And then the PUD plan that you have before you will serve as the preliminary plat. Any questions?
On the findings, it said that they were in the floodplain, and you remarked that they'd be raised by fill and are removed through the LMOR/F process.
Yeah,
I don't know what the LUMF process is.
It's an acronym. It's from FEMA, where they love acronyms. It's a letter of map revision based on fill. Let me go back to the map. If you look at the area, the area that's over here in pink, that area was area they dug soil out of the floodplain and used it to fill the rest of the development and elevate it out of the floodplain. And so we have the FEMA map shows that this part of this development is still located in the floodplain, but that's just a horizontal projection of an older model, and the developer hasn't updated that map to remove the area that's been filled out of the floodplain, and we're just asking them to finish that work. They've done the physical work to physically remove it out of the floodplain, so we want to make sure that the regulatory mechanisms recognize that, so they're not, it affects how much their insurance rates and stuff are. So we want to make sure that they finish the paperwork, basically, to do it. They're not going to do any physical construction or activity to do that. They just need to make the map match what is out in the field.
So basically, Mike, you're saying what's there now is out of the floodplain?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Just the paperwork needs to be
They just
done.
need to finish the paperwork, yes.
Gotcha.
All righty. We'll go ahead and open the public meeting. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please step forward, state your name and address.
Good evening, Kelly Harris with Keystone Engineering, located at 923 South Lowry, here representing the owner tonight. Mike really covered most of it. I will just speak a little bit to that, the FEMA. As part of one of the two main goals of this development is as soon as it catches up here, do I have to push a button? There it goes, okay. You can see the majority of the lots have been raised, but there is an existing drainage ditch that comes along the back of these lots right here on the south side. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's a large drainage ditch back here. And then there is the end of a drainage ditch along the front, along 19th. So one of the two main goals of this replat is to create outlots around those so that the FEMA floodplain is completely removed from a lot that a resident could actually buy. So we're basically cutting the south lots almost in half to get that floodplain off of those lots. So they still have the same amount of buildable area as they do on this plat, but to make insurance cheaper, if we cut that floodplain off of their lot completely, they can say they have no floodplain on their lot. So it's really due to paperwork that part of the request is going forward. And then the other main goal of the subdivision is office never really took off in this area, so we just want to complete the subdivision in the way it's been developed so far. So if you have any other questions, I can answer them.
Kelly, how will the driveways work? I know that on the other, I was on here when we approved it the first time, but.
Right.
And, basically it was all rear entry through an alley and around the back. I guess you probably won't be
We
able to
won't be
do
able to
that.
continue that, that facet of the original development in this area.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor? All right, anyone wish to speak in opposition of this, please step forward. Seeing none, we'll close the meeting and ask for staff's alternatives. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Bring it back here.
Close.
You're supposed to say hearing.
Yes, not the meeting.
You can recommend the approval of the PUD and the rezoning and approve the preliminary plat. You can recommend approval with conditions. You can recommend that the request be denied, or you can continue or table to a specific date.
What is the difference between number 1 and number 2?
Well, kind of, it's a PUD is a combined zoning and subdivision process. The PUD will have conditions that are tied to the
So
zoning.
to do what the developer wants to
You
do,
need to do both.
we need to
one
do
and-
both 1 and 2.
That's right.
So is that 1 motion or 2 motions?
I would say you could do it, approve as presented, because it was presented as both of them together.
Are you done, Mike?
I'm done.
Now, will the Lomar have to be approved before, how does that timing work with this process?
Well, I mean, it would be approved before we would issue any certificates of occupancy, because they're building in the floodplain, they've done fill, so that could be a condition that it be done before final. So the improvements have been done.
I mean, that's kind of my only concern.
I understand that, but isn't the City of Stillwater floodplain regulations would not allow a building permit to be issued on any of those lots until that Lomar is approved? So they could do on other lots, but they can't.
The City of Stillwater's floodplain ordinance allows development in the floodplain. You have to flood-proof the house. In this case, they would
And the
have
fill's
to-
already flood.
The hill's already flood-proof, the fill's already flood-proofed. They would have to provide an elevation certificate, and then we would say, okay, fine, build your house. The negative aspect of just doing that and not doing the Lomar is that when they go to get flood insurance, it still shows up that the property is located in a floodplain. So they would still pay a premium, because even though they're elevated out, they're surrounded by floodplain. So the request to complete the Lomar F is to help the property owners, protect them, save them money.
Because if they're in the floodplain, a mortgage bank,
Yes.
whatever is going to require flooding.
That's right. Even with an elevation certificate showing that they're elevated out, they're still going to pay a premium for flood insurance and still be required to obtain it.
Right. Kelly, can I ask you a question? Any ideal timing-wise when you'll get that Lomar done?
We would typically send it off once. It's tricky because we can't send it off until the final plat's been done and those lots have been created that we're asking for it to be removed out of. Right now, those lots aren't really created because this is a replat. And so it takes 3 months once we send it off to get that response back.
Would it be too burdensome if we said before CO was issued that Lomar's in place?
No.
that would make me feel a little better to protect someone who's going to potentially build on one of those lots.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, the Lomer has already been done for the other half of the subdivision. It was not completed on these lots due to those drainage channels existing on those lots. So we couldn't take them out before, but we can now.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
It's just, it's a real pretty little development now with the houses and the bungalows and all. And the way they're changing it with a 6-foot wall, and essentially it's just going to be a big blank wall on 19th Street the whole way down now. So we're going to kind of lose what's kind of a nice open little area behind essentially a one entrance and a big blank fence. I just feel like a lot of the character of that area was this sort of a mixed development type of use, something a little bit different, and essentially it's turning into a subdivision like all the rest by doing it this way. Because they're going to close it off with fences and put homes with no rear. I'm wondering why we should allow them to make all these changes on it.
Well, I think it's a downzoning as far as, you're looking at having potential office use on all these spaces versus residential use. So I justify it that way, Brad, that I feel like it's a pretty substantial downzoning, and so I can get behind it in that respect.
Anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'm say that we accept findings and recommend that the City Council approve the proposed amendment to existing plan unit development and approve the proposed map amendment to rezone the office PUD portion of the property to residential 1 and 2 family PUD district with the addition of no certificates of occupancy being issued until the Lomar is complete.
And accept findings and accept the preliminary plat as presented?
Yes, accept findings and accept the preliminary plat as presented. Thanks, Mike.
I'll second that motion.
Shall we vote? And that does pass 5 yeses. And we'll move on to item C, Gary and Mickey Rogers final plat PZ-17-2181, requesting review and approval of a final plat for the property addressed as 700 to 800 East Northgate Drive to replat Lot 36, Block 1 in the RSS Residential Single Family Small Lot Zoning District, and request to consider design modifications to the public water main extension per section 2364 and 23.357. Mr. Beatty.
All right, this is close to the first project we considered. It's in the North Tower Park, Section 5. We had looked at rezoning and preliminary plat of this a couple of weeks ago. During the process, the issue of the water pressure for new lines came up, and so what you have is a request for the approval of the final plat with a request to modify the design requirements. There's an existing water line. Well, let's look at this. The proposed area is here along Hartford, straddles Hartford, in north of Northgate. The plat will create 12 lots with an outlot and have a street extension. Now, the subdivision requirements require that with every new street, you extend a water line. As we discussed earlier, the extension of the water line is not really possible here, and still being able to meet the 40 PSI requirement for the new water line. What has been proposed to address that is the plat will include private water line easements along the fronts of the lots along the new roadway extension, Baker Street, and will tie into the existing water line that's on Hartford and then the existing water line that's on Northgate. That the request is to, for the Planning Commission to waive the requirement to extend a new water line, creating a conflict with the new design standards, and still enable them to have access to water. All of the same conditions we discussed with the other preliminary plat with water pressure still apply here. It's not volume of water, it's just the fact that the water tower is not tall enough. This is a excerpt from our GIS showing the different water lines in the area. If you notice Perkins Street, that dark blue line, the heavy line, is a 24-inch main that runs from the water plant and serves the whole eastern portion of town. It connects directly to the water tower and also directly to Hartford near the water tower and down at Northgate. So there's plenty of water supply. The problem is just with the location and the short elevation of the tower. So the request before you with the approval of the preliminary plat is to, along with that approval, provide a waiver of the requirement for constructing a new water line that can't meet our standards.
The one that we approved earlier, it does not have any private water lines, does it?
No, if you look on this photo,
I
the
have
small
a
line-
problem with private water lines because I worked for the city of Tulsa several years, and private water lines across properties become a significant problem 20, 30 years from now. And who's going to maintain them? If there's a problem with one neighbor against another neighbor, I have not had a good experience with that.
We're not proposing a private main. There would be on lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, there would be 5 separate services. There'd be 5 meters here at the corner of Hartford and East Baker Court.
That is exactly the situation I ran into time and time again at the city of Tulsa, where we had those off of a street. There'd be problems. They'd be going. So you're 3 houses in. You got a water meter down at the corner that goes in front of 2 houses. You've got a problem in your water line, and now you're complaining to the city about that breaking. And
it definitely is not an ideal situation. Yes. I won't disagree with that.
I guess I'm I'd rather have a public water line that meets DEQ requirements, doesn't meet the city requirements, but have it publicly maintained versus having all these private lines. I bring this up so when the public comments come, they can be addressed.
Okay. Any other questions with that? I'll kind of go through.
Appreciate it.
I don't disagree with any of that. It's a tough situation. And
Yes,
this
it
is a solution that was kind of presented and thought through, and certainly not the only one. But our findings: the plat is compatible with comprehensive plan of low-density residential. It's consistent with all applicable city codes. This one is. With the waiver of the public water line extension. It utilizes public streets, sidewalks, and other utilities. It's a correct zoning for the proposed final replat. It's fewer lots than the original approved preliminary plat. And the only unique thing is the design requirement modification is necessary.
Thank you.
Oh, just when we were presented this, the preliminary plat on March 7, y'all did not know that the water wouldn't work at that point, or that was not a consideration at that point? 'Cause it was certainly not brought up when we talked about it on March 7th at all.
Yeah, usually when you get in, you have a preliminary plat, you have proposed location of the water line, but we haven't done a final design or analysis. Usually you do a demand analysis when you get into the sizing of the water line. You don't know if it's going to be a 6 or an 8 or a 10-inch line. And so that design process hadn't been worked through at that time. And so that it came up during the public improvement design phases of the project.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing and ask for anyone who wishes to speak in favor to please step forward.
Good evening, Kelly Harris with Keystone Engineering, located at 923 South Lowry, here representing the owners tonight. So you have seen this several times before. First with the rezoning, and then last year, towards the end of the year, we brought a preliminary plat through that had several more lots down in this area. It had a proposed street that those lots would access off of. We had a proposed water line looping around here and a proposed water line coming down to serve the cul-de-sac. At that time, the preliminary plat was approved. Then we proceed with final design, which is when we get into the demand analysis of the water line. At that time, it was determined that the 40 PSI could not be met, and so we did model and prove that we didn't decrease the pressure that the current residents were seeing out there with these additional lots. However, it was determined that new water lines cannot be constructed unless they meet the 40 PSI. And so we came up with the alternative of the private service lines. However, in combination with that, at the same time, the owners decided they didn't want to extend this road. And so as part of a separate process, we did decide to lower the number of lots down here, not based on water pressure or demand, but because we didn't want to build that road. However, it did help with the number of private water services that we were asking for. So all the current lots that we're asking for do service off of an existing main. However, they do have to go through private lots with private service easements. And so that's why when we decreased the number of lots, you saw the revised preliminary plat in March, just a couple months ago, or a month ago. And then at this time, we're moving forward with the preliminary, or the final plat. So that design was done quite a while ago, and this is the alternatives that have presented because of that.
So if you've got a private service line, how many lots is the maximum it crosses before it serves a home? Is it crossing 2, 3, 4 lots?
It crosses 3 is the max. So this lot right here, water meter will be down here. So it crosses this lot, this one, and this one.
And what it crosses, those are served by a different private line, or are they on the same private line?
They are separate meters, or separate service lines, but
So you'll have
laid parallel.
So you'll have 4 meters at that location, and they will then be going in a northerly direction, and they'll be parallel to one another. And so if one breaks and causes 2 others to break, that's just life, isn't it?
In this area.
Yes. Okay.
That was pretty much everything. I think that's the major catch on this final plat. If you have any other questions, though, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor of this item? Seeing none, we'll ask anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of this item. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternative.
All right, you can approve the proposed final plat, final replat, and remove the improvement requirement as presented. You could not approve the final replat and an improvement requirement, or you can table the request a certain date. Not approving either one of them would effectively kill the plat. So with the improvement requirement modification is really kind of necessary for the final plat.
Is there and I have a tendency to agree with Mike. I'd rather see it.
I've been through this enough at the state of Tulsa. I'm going to be on record 20 years from now that I voted against this if this goes forward.
But, I mean, is there a way to approve it and not meet the 40 PSI? To be able to, I mean, is that something this board can do?
The only option that this board can do is to waive the requirement for the plat and allow the private lines. The waiver of the 40 PSI is in anything specific to the operation or function of the public mains is a prerogative or requirement of the director of water utilities, and they're really hesitant to do that because they set a standard and they want to try and meet it for that, and not so much for this area, but there's a lot of other areas in town where it is flow and volume problems, and it has a unique purpose. So,
Gotcha. You know, Mike, I'm torn. I mean, I want to see a developer be able to use this land.
Yes.
And I do understand your concern with the privatization of the lines coming in. So I get both sides of it. And I know you've been there and done that. So, but again, you know, I think the developer has a right to figure out a way to get houses built too. So therein lies my struggle.
But earlier, on the earlier one, we said, sorry, people, can't do anything about it. It's in there. It doesn't make a big effect. The rules are such that when you did it, this is where it's at. Now they want to do an extension in here. All of a sudden, it doesn't fit the rule, and they want to get the rule. I mean, so the people we just said we couldn't do anything, now we're saying, well, if there was a rule, we would let it go through anyway. So I have a problem with allowing the first thing we talked about through. If we went to that and said, well, it's just that's the way it is. Now, here's the rule. They don't want to follow the rule. So, I mean, one or the other. My feeling would be is they get one or the other. But the other, I'd be okay with one or the other, but not both. I just can't go for both of these. Either they don't build right underneath the tower, fine, and then I'd let some other method here for this piece. Or if they want to build right under the tower, then they need to have a full line. They've got to have the pressure.
Well, I think the only difference in that, Brad, is the fact that they were tying onto an existing line with the one that we approved earlier. Right. Here, the only reason they're having to put in a new line is because they're putting in a new street. And they're saying, okay, well, we'll just go and tie into the existing line like they're doing on the other one. But instead, you're going to have longer private water lines. So, I mean, you can look at that both ways.
When you go to purchase one of those lots, you'll be able to see that there's easements there, correct? I mean, you'll know the risk that your yard will get dug up if something were, and I realize.
It is pretty rare that the real estate agent will point out that you have a private water line. In most cases, 10, 15, 20 years from now, they have no idea. And then they lose water, they call the city. City comes out, says it's private. And then it's in front of the city council and everything else. So
But those easements would be
They'd
made
be,
known to them at that point that they're purchasing the house. They have to be made aware of easements.
that's correct.
I guess it would be platted, correct? It'd be on the,
It'd be on the plat.
at the courthouse and all that,
Yes.
so.
I think let the buyer beware.
You gonna make a motion?
I'll make the motion. I'll throw it up there. We'll see where it goes. I'm going to make the motion to accept findings and approve the proposed final replat and allow the removal of the improvement requirement.
And I will second that motion. And that does pass 3-2. That brings us to item 3, approval of the regular meeting summary of March 7, 2017.
Move for approval.
Second.
Vote on that as well. And that does pass as well. Brings us to item 4. The next planning commission meeting will be held April 4, 2017. And with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second. That we can all agree on.
We are adjourned.